usually in a database, but not always. And then a view is just like a template in our last project. We called them templates, but they're essentially the same thing. It's just the display that the user interacts with. And the controller loads the view as well, just like in our last project, the base files that I actually called controllers a few times would load the template for us. All right, so this is the same thing. It's just a view. So this is basically the simplest diagram that I could find. So the browser interacts with the controller. So let's say we have a CodeIgniter app, and it's called myapp.com. If we go to myapp.com/users, that's going to automatically bring us to the user's controller. All right. Usually we would have another slash and then something like register. So what this would do would bring us to the user's controller to the register method or function. All right. It's all object oriented. It's all in classes, controllers, models. They're all classes. And then if we wanted to pass a parameter in there, like, I don't know, a user with the ID of 19 or something like that. So it would be the user's controller, the register method in the user's controller, and then we'd pass in 19 to the register method as a parameter. All right, so that's kind of they're called routes. All right, that's how CodeIgniter basically works with the browser. And if you've never used CodeIgniter or MVC, then you might be a little overwhelmed, but the application we're building really isn't that complicated, so you should be able to follow along okay. All right, so the home site for CodeIgniter is ellislab.com. All right, and there's just a ton of, if we click on CodeIgniter, a ton of documentation. If you do the project and you really like CodeIgniter, I definitely suggest going to the manual or the documentation, and if you click on table of contents, it just has everything. Class reference, so there's just a ton of different libraries that you can use, input libraries, security, sessions, pagination, output, language, config, shopping cart class, which we'll be using. There's just a whole bunch, and then there's helper reference. Okay, so CodeIgniter uses helpers just like we did in our last application. File helpers, HTML, form validation. There's just a ton, and general topics, routes, controllers, models, views, URLs, things like that. So I definitely suggest, if you like CodeIgniter, to just basically go through this, the whole manual. All right, you can learn a lot, and it's pretty easy to understand. I think, in my opinion, CodeIgniter is one of the easiest PHP frameworks to learn, and it's actually, I think I'd say it's my favorite framework, and I try to kind of write my custom PHP applications using some of the same principles that CodeIgniter uses. All right, so what we're going to be building is a fairly simple shopping cart. All right, and we're going to use CodeIgniter along with the cart library or cart class that CodeIgniter offers, which basically takes advantage of sessions to give you a nice shopping cart. All right, so basically we have a products page, and this is going to be a gaming site called the Gaming Place. It's just one of the first things that came to my mind, and I kind of wanted to have some kind of specific niche where all the products were related. All right, so basically we have products and we have categories. All right, so they're categorized into separate consoles: Xbox One games, PS4, Nintendo Wii, Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, Nintendo Wii games, and other console games. All right, and then down here we just have the most popular, which are the most purchased games. And here we can add games to our cart. All right, we can change the quantity if we want. We can say we want 2, add to cart, and you can see over here we have a little cart in our sidebar that has the total, and we can actually update our cart through here as well. If we want to change it to 1, you can click update, and it actually brings us to our cart. And you can see that it has the title of the game, shipping costs, tax, which we can define in our configuration, and then the total. All right, and to check out, you actually need to create an account. All right, so you could create an account, go through, register, kind of like the last application we did. You'll just register and you'll immediately be able to log in. All right, so we can log in here just to show you. Okay, so now we're logged in, and if we go to the cart, now we have a spot for shipping info. All right, so we can fill that out, click checkout. Each product will go into an orders table, which will have the user ID that ordered the games. Each game, it'll have all the address stuff so that the seller could ship the games. And then it's going to redirect to PayPal, and it's going to use we're going to use a PayPal class that allows us to use Express Checkout, and it doesn't just show up as one product with a total of all the games the user bought. It'll actually show each game in the PayPal user interface. All right, so the seller can actually log into PayPal and see exactly which products were purchased. And I'm just going to kind of use a general open source PayPal class. We're not going to actually create it from scratch because that would just take way too long, and I think it's just the level of coding is above this tutorial. All right, so we'll go to PayPal, they pay, gets sent back to the site, and that's that really. We're not going to have advanced features with this cart. I want to get it done in a minimal amount of videos. I don't want you to have to watch 100 videos. So that's really it. Just like with every other project, we'll develop the interface first, which again is using Bootstrap with some customization. So what we'll do is basically create an HTML template, design this, and then we'll get into developing the application. But before we build the interface, I just want to install CodeIgniter and just get it set up on our server. So if you go to ellislab.com/CodeIgniter, you just click the green download button. All right, and it'll download. The latest version now is 2.2.0. All right, so what we're going to do is, I'm using XAMPP, so we're going to go into htdocs, and let's see, I'm going to change the name of the gaming place so that we can use that folder name. Change that to done, and then we'll create our folder. And what we're going to do is open the CodeIgniter zip and take everything out except for, we don't need the user guide, we don't need the license unless you want it. The user guide is actually an exact replication of the manual that's available on the CodeIgniter site. Well, I think it's an exact copy. I know that it has a lot of the same stuff. So now we have all of our application files. Basically, system we're not going to touch. It's just the core framework files. We don't need to touch that. Our application folder is where all the things that we're going to deal with. All right, so we have our config files. You can see there's a bunch of them. We have autoloaders, so we don't have to manually load all our classes, configurations, database connection, routes, all kinds of things. Controllers, okay, that's where all our controllers will go. There's a welcome controller by default. Core, we don't really need to touch. errors, helpers, libraries, which basically work like the libraries in our last application if we want to add custom ones, models, and views. Okay, so those are the main folders that we're going to be dealing with. So the first thing we want to do, I'm going to open up Notepad++ and go to the Gaming Place folder, application folder, and I'm going to open up in my config, I'm going to open up database.php, and actually before we edit this, let's go create one. Alright, so I'm going to go to phpMyAdmin, and I'm going to create a database called Gaming Place. Okay, so now I'll go back to the database configuration file, and for username, I'm going to put my database username, password. Database is going to be Gaming Place. Alright, so that's all we have to do to configure our database. So we can save that and close that. Alright, so let's see what happens if we go to the front end. Localhost / the Gaming Place, and it gives us this default page. Alright, so it says this page is being generated dynamically by CodeIgniter. If you'd like to edit this page, you can find it located at, and then it gives you the view for the page, which is the welcome message view. Okay, it's in the views folder. And the controller for this is in the controllers folder called welcome.php. Now you can set a default controller. In this case, it's welcome, and the default controller is accessed when you don't actually have a controller name here. Okay, if we put users here, it's going to go to the users controller. If we put welcome, it's going to go to the welcome control, or not. Actually, you know what? It's because we don't have search engine friendly URLs. By default, you need to have index.php and then / the controller name. So that takes us back to welcome. Now, we don't want this, alright? We want to be able to just go to our controller like this. Alright, so what we need to do is create a .htaccess file, alright, and that'll allow us to rewrite our URLs to look better. Alright, so what we want to do here is in our application folder, actually you can see that the application folder has a .htaccess. This isn't the one we want. We actually want to put it in the root. Alright, so let's say new file and call it .htaccess. Alright, so I'm going to paste a block of code in here, and I can't really explain exactly what everything does. Just know that it rewrites our URLs to just to look. So I'm going to paste this in here. Alright, so basically people are not going to be able to access system files. Everything's going to go through the index.php file. Alright, and we can add exceptions, and we need exceptions for things like our images folder. Those should be accessible. CSS, JavaScript, our robots text file, favicon if we have one. These are all exceptions, and you can put new folder names in here if you want different things accessed directly through the browser, but otherwise it's going to go through our index file. So if we go ahead and save this, alright, and then one other thing to do is go to the config and then routes, and down here, where is it? Maybe it's not routes, but you can see routes is where you define your default controller. In this case is welcome. Ultimately our default controller is going to be products, because we want products displayed on our home page. But I guess it's not routes. I think it's config then. Yeah, okay. So config.php, you can see this config index page. You want to take this away, okay? Just make this equal to nothing, because we don't want to have index.php / whatever. Alright, so that's good. Base URL, we should also put that in. In our case, or in my case, it's going to be localhost / the gaming place. Okay, so I'm going to put that in there. And you should also have the / at the end. Okay, so that's our base URL. So if we save this and now we try to reload this without index.php, it works. Okay, so now we can go directly to the controller and not have to put in index.php. Alright, so now that we have CodeIgniter installed and ready to go, in the next, I want to go to develop our user interface next, just because I just want to get that out of the way before we actually jump in and get into PHP mode. Alright, in this video we are going to set up our database for the gaming place. It's going to hold 4 different tables. We're going to have products, categories, orders, and users. Alright, so I already created a database called Gaming Place, so I'm going to click on that. Alright, so let's first create products, and this is going to have 6 fields. Okay, so we want the product ID, which is going to be an integer. We'll say 11, and then we want to set it to auto increment and primary key. Next, we'll have the category ID, which is going to be the foreign key for the categories table. Next, we'll have the product title, and that's going to be a varchar, and we'll give it 255. Next is the description. I'm going to set that to the text field. Alright, next will be image, which will hold an image path and image name, which will be varchar, and we'll say 100. And then finally the price, which is going to be a decimal, and for length we want to show 2 decimal points, so we're going to say 10,2. Alright, so that should be good for products. Let's click on save. Valid length. Oh, this should be blank. This should be 100. Okay, next will be categories. And let me see, categories is going to have just 2 columns. Okay, so it's going to have an ID and a name. ID, we'll say 11, and this is going to be auto increment, primary key. Then name is going to be varchar, and we'll say 100. Okay, so next we'll have orders, and orders is going to hold the products that were purchased. Okay, so this is going to have, let me see, this is going to have actually 11 fields. Okay, of course we're going to have an ID for a primary key. And next we'll have the actual product ID. Next we'll have the user ID that made the purchase, and a transaction ID, which in this case would be a PayPal transaction. That's going to be varchar, and we'll just do 255. Next is the quantity. Integer is good. Price will be decimal, and we want to put in here 10,2. After price is going to be the location info, so address 2, city, state, and zip code. Okay, change these types to varchar. Okay, and Address, let me just put 255. City can be 100. State 100. Zip code 30. Alright, so that's good. Save. One more table to create, and that is the users table, which will have 7 fields. Okay, so we want an ID, primary key, auto increment. Next will be first name, last name, email, username, password, and join date. Okay, firecar for most of these. Join date can be a timestamp, and I'm going to set the default to current timestamp. And then for these, let's just do 100. Alright. So there's our database. Now you want to make sure that you have the correct credentials inside of your config folder. Okay, so inside the application folder, and then the config folder, and then database, you want to make sure that you have your username, your password, and your database name. Okay, so you need to make sure that those match your database in order for it to work with it. Now what I want to do before we start programming is I want to insert some sample data into our database for when we want to actually display it in our application. So first thing, I'm going to add some categories. Okay, so if we click on categories and then go to insert, I'm going to add 5 more rows. Okay, so for categories, basically they're going to be the different consoles available. So Xbox One games, okay, PS4 games, Nintendo Wii U games. Actually, we'll just do Nintendo Wii games. Okay, next is Xbox 360, then PS3, and that's good. Alright, so you want to make sure this ignore is unchecked as well, and then click on go. So now we have some categories. Now let's add some products. Actually, you know what? Let's add a user first. We want to go to insert and create a user. Username, I'm just going to say Brad. And of course, ultimately, we're not going to store plain text passwords. They're going to be encrypted, but this is just to use now. Okay, so there's one user. Now we want to add a product. Insert. We'll add a few. Okay, so what I'm going to do is just copy and paste some products. So Destiny, which is, I believe it's an Xbox One game. So Xbox One was category 1, so we'll put a 1 there. Image, let's see, image is going to be game1.jpg, and then price will be $59.99. Okay, next one is also an Xbox One game, so it's going to have the category ID 1, and let me just paste this in, Call of Duty Ghosts. Obviously this information doesn't really need to be accurate, it's just for example. And what I did was just Googled some games and copied the description. So this will be game2.jpg, and then the price is also $59.99. Let's add those, and I actually want to add a couple more. Okay, next is Watch Dogs, and that's going to be PS3, I believe, which is what? Category 5. Description. Game 3. Price is going to be $49.99. Okay, next is Sniper Elite. That's category 1. Paste in a description. Game4.jpg, and then price for this $49.99. Alright, so we'll add those. Okay, so now we have a few products. I'm actually going to add 2 more, just to make it look like our HTML template. Okay, Batman, and this is going to be PS4, so it's category 2. Description. Image will be game5.jpg. Price $59.99, and then one more, which will be Shadow of Mordor. This will also be a category 2 game, PS4. Price, say $49.99. Alright, so there's our 6 products. I'm not going to add anything to the orders table. Alright, that'll be handled later on. So now that we have a database ready, we can start to program our application. Alright, in this video we're going to create our HTML template, which is going to serve as our user interface for the Gaming Place e-commerce application. Alright, so this is going to be it's going to be a Bootstrap template. Alright, so you can see it has very familiar Bootstrap qualities, the nav bar, the list groups. Alright, so we're just going to take the sample template that Bootstrap gives us and just tweak it a little bit to our liking. If you're not interested in watching me create the HTML and CSS, just use the project files and feel free to move on. Alright, so we're going to go to getbootstrap.com, alright, and download Bootstrap. Okay, and then open that zip file. And I have an empty folder on my desktop called tgp_html. This is going to serve as our HTML template. Alright, so in the Bootstrap folder, we're just going to bring everything over for now. Alright, and for the CSS folder, we want to get rid of everything except bootstrap.css. Alright, and let's also create a custom.css style sheet. Alright, now JavaScript, I'm just going to get rid of the minified version, and let's create an index page, index.html. Alright, so I'm going to open up index, and I'm going to go to, on the Bootstrap site, I'm going to click on examples and then the starter template. And we just want to do a Control-U and copy all the source. Alright, and then paste that in index. And I'm also going to click on, not that, right here, excuse me, starter template CSS, and I'm just going to grab this for now and put that in our custom CSS file. Okay, we'll save that, go back to the index page, and we're going to do a few things here. I'm going to get rid of the description, author, icon. We don't need that stuff. You can keep it if you want. Title, let's just change that. I'm going to change it to the gaming place. This link to the Bootstrap CSS, I'm going to get rid of that, the min, because we just kept that one bootstrap.css file. And we want to make it so it's just going to the CSS folder. We don't need any of this. And then for the second one here, starter template, let's replace that with css/custom.css. And we're going to get rid of all this here. We don't need that. Alright, so now we're moving on to the navigation. I'm going to change the brand or the logo here. Call it the gaming place. And I'm just going to point that to the index.html file for now. Same thing with this home link. And then change about to create account. And for now, that'll just go to register.html. And get rid of this contact link. Alright, so I want to put a login form here as well. So I'm going to go back to the Bootstrap site, and I want to go to the navbar snippets. So I think it's components and navbar. Alright, so you can see this example here. They have a search box. That's what I want, so I'm going to copy that form, which is right here, and go ahead and put that right under the UL. Okay, and I'm going to change this navbar left to right, and we can get rid of this roll. And then for the input, we're going to add a name, and that's going to be username. And then for the placeholder, let's just put enter username. Alright, now we need a password field, which is also going to be wrapped in this form group div. So I'm going to just copy this and then change this here to a password. Type is going to be password, and then the placeholder, enter password. And then for this button here, let's give it a name of submit. And change the submit text to login. Alright, so that should do it for our navbar. Let's take a look. Okay, so this is the actual application. I'm going to open up the index HTML page. Alright, so we get our navbar. Now we need to create our columns, because we're going to use the Bootstrap grid system. Alright, basically this sidebar here will be a 4-column div, and then this main area will be an 8-column div. Okay, so let's put those in here, right in the container. First we need a row. And we'll do the sidebar first, so that's going to be col-md-4. Alright, and then we want the main area, which is going to be col-md-8. Alright, so that gives us our sidebar and our main area. Now to speed things up, I'm going to be copying and pasting snippets of code in here. Alright, so the first thing I'm going to put in the sidebar is going to be our cart block. So let me paste that in. And I'll go over it real quick. Basically we have a div with the class of cart block, It's going to have a form. The action and things like that aren't really important right now. This is just for display. And then we're going to have a table with some cell padding, spacing. We're going to have the quantity, the item, and the item price. We have nothing here now because we will be, our application will dynamically generate that stuff, so we don't need it here. And then just an area for the total. All right, and then under the table, we just have the submit button. Okay. Actually, we have two buttons. One is an actual button to update the cart, so we can update the quantity and click update cart. Next one is just a link going to the cart. All right. So if we save that, we can take a look. All right, so not too pretty. That's because we're going to be adding our own custom CSS. So next, I want to do basically these are list groups when using Bootstrap. We can even go and check them out, check out the syntax. Click on list group. Basically, this is it. All right, so you want a class of list group. The list items have a class of list group item, and that gives it this padded border look. Actually, we're using links, so we'll be using this format. Alright, so let's go back to index and go below the cart block, which ends right here. So we want to go right under that. And by the way, we're also using panels. Alright, so panels allow us to have this, I guess this heading right here and wraps around the list items. And you can see that code as well in the, where is it? Panels, where are they? Right here, panels. Okay, so basically you can have a panel with a heading. Okay, so that's what we're going to be doing. So I'm just going to paste that in right under the cart block. So it starts here, and you can see we have a couple classes here. And then the panel heading, I threw in this, okay, this panel heading dark, and that's just so we can actually make the heading dark like this. Alright, and then we have down here a different color heading, and over here we have a green heading. So just to kind of break it up a little bit. Category H3 categories, and then we have, like I said, the list group, okay, with our categories. And then right under that, we're going to have this most popular list group. So let me just grab that real quick. I'm going to paste that right under, yeah, right under here. Alright, so if we save it, let's take a look. Alright. So when we do the custom CSS style sheet, we'll make this dark and we'll make these links not blue. Alright, so next we have the main area where these games are. Basically we're going to do a grid inside of a grid. So we're going to have three 4-column divs. Alright, so I'm just going to paste this in. It's just all static content. So right under here I'm going to paste, and we just have a bunch of games that all start with a 4-column div, and also I threw in the class game for each one. Alright, so you can see we have the game title. This is the game image, which is linked to product.html for now. And then the button we have add to cart. Now you'll notice I don't have the quantity input in this HTML. We're just going to add that when we actually create the application, when we create the view. Alright, so let's just save this and see what it gives us. Actually, hold on. Oh, we put that in the sidebar. Let me just undo that. And we want to make sure we put it inside of this div with the 8. Okay, save that. Alright, so our images, we need our images. So I'm actually going to just grab those from the application. Create an images folder. Alright, let me just grab those images. These will be in your project files. And I'm not sure if it... Alright, yeah, it just goes to images and then the game. Alright, so there's our games. The price, obviously this doesn't look very good. We're going to fix that in our CSS. Alright, so next we just want just a simple footer. I'm going to go under the container div, go right under it, and paste in a very small amount of code. It's just another row. Gave it the class of footer, has a container within it, and then just a paragraph with whatever our copyright. Alright, so one other thing I'm going to do is move this JavaScript here to the top. So let's just grab these two script tags, and I'm going to get rid of these comments. And I'm just going to go paste them up here under our CSS style sheets. And also we need to change this link. We just want it to go right to the JS folder. And we're not using the minified version, so I'm going to get rid of that. I actually don't even think we need this bootstrap JS file, but I just like to keep it just in case we want to add a slider or something like that. Alright. So that should complete the HTML. Alright, so we have our footer, and obviously we still need to style this. So I'm going to end the video here, and next we will create the HTML for our other pages and also the CSS so we can actually make this look presentable. Hey guys, what we're going to do now that we have our base HTML, we're just going to create the couple other views or layouts that we have, like the register form, the details view, and the cart. Alright, so I just want to say that some minor details may be different when we actually insert the view into our application as opposed to this skeleton HTML. So there might be a few things. For instance, we don't have the quantity here. We're just going to add that when we actually do the application view. Alright, so the next page I want to do is the register.html. Alright, so let's go to our HTML folder, and I'm going to create a new document and call it register.html. And we might as well create the other pages as well. Let's create details.html, and also cart.html. Alright, so I'm going to open up register, and basically I'm just going to copy everything from the index page, which is our base layout, our base template, and paste that in. And then the sidebar is going to be the exact same. Let's delete the main content, which is the games. Okay, so we just want to clear out this 8-column div. Okay, so it ends right here, so we want to just get rid of everything that's in it. Actually, you know what, we want to keep the panel. Okay, see how we have this panel, and then we have the panel heading. So let's go right under panel body. Okay, let's see where this ends. Right there. So let's just grab this whole row. Okay, so right here. Alright, so for the title, let's go ahead and change that. I'm actually going to just change that to the gaming place. And I'm going to paste in the form. Alright, so basically we just have a form with a name. Actually, I need to change this up a little bit. It's going to be a first name. Okay, we can change this to first name. And we might as well, oh yeah, we need a last name. Again, I'm sorry that I can't hand type everything because, I mean, as it is, we need 3 videos just to do this, the HTML, and I don't even want to spend 3 videos on it. But then again, I don't want to just, you know, not do it and just throw it in, because I like to kind of build it from top to bottom. And I do apologize that I can't hand type every single HTML tag. It would just make this way too long. Alright, so I'm trying to just make it short and sweet, I guess. Alright, so first name, last name, email, username, password confirm, and then register. Alright, so pretty simple form. Let's save that, and we should now be able to go to create account. Alright, so I know this looks a little weird. We're going to fix that when we do the CSS. So that's register. The next one, let's do the details page. So if we open that up, I'm just going to copy what we have in register, paste that in. Okay, and we just want to get rid of the form. And I'm just going to paste in here. Alright, so basically I paste in a row, and I added the class details. Alright, then we have a 4 column and an 8 column. Alright, so if we look at the, actually we'll just save it and look at it. But anyway, we have the name of the game, the price, we have the details, and then a buy button or a submit button. Alright, which says add to cart. So if we save that, reload, and we click on one of these games, actually it takes us to a product.html. It should be details, but just so I don't have to change everything, I'm just going to rename details to product. Alright, and basically all of them are going to go to this Call of Duty because that's what I have for our static content. Alright, so very, very simple details page. Alright, so the last page that I want to create is the cart, so let's open that up. And again, I'm going to copy everything in register. And then we want to just delete the form. I'm going to paste in the cart, which is basically a table. Okay, so we have a table with the product, quantity, price. I have a couple sample items in there. And then we just have basically a form down here for the address, city, state, zip code, and then a checkout button. And there will be some minor changes to the HTML when we actually implement the view in our application, but not too much, won't be too much different. So let's save that and just check out, let's see, we want to go to cart.html. Alright, I actually want to use the striped table class that comes with Bootstrap. So let's see, we want the table tag. I'm going to change this from table bordered to table striped. Alright, so then we get that every other row is striped effect. So that looks good. Those are the main pages. So now what I want to do is just customize, create our custom CSS file. Open up custom CSS. I want to open it with Notepad++. And let's go ahead and get rid of this starter template class. We don't need that. And if we look at the template, you can see that the main content area is pushed up against the nav bar. So what I'm going to do is bring that body padding top. I'm going to bring that to 75. Alright, so that looks a lot better. The nav bar is good, except I want the links to be white and not this darker grayish color. Alright, so we'll say nav bar A. Color is going to be white, and let's make that important. Alright, so now they're white. And the next thing I want to do is the cart block. Alright, so we actually want a background for that and just make it pop a little more. So let's see, let's do, I believe it's cart block, and we'll give it a background of dark gray, and of course we want the color to be white, and a padding of 10 pixels, and also just a margin bottom, and I want that to be 20 pixels. Okay, so that gives us our cart. And next I want to add some panel stuff. I want to make this dark, this background, make this one green, just customize it a little bit. So let's first let's say panel list A. I want to display as a block and make the color dark gray. And let's see, the panel heading, so panel list and panel heading H3. I want to add some padding there and also change the font size, make it a little bigger, 18 pixels. Alright, and then we'll do the custom panels. Let me just paste those in. Okay, so we got our panel heading green and panel heading dark. Okay, so let's save that. Okay, so now this is dark, this is green, that one's gray, that's fine. You can see that there's more padding now, makes it a little bigger, a little more prominent. Alright, so let's go back to the home page. Index. Alright, so now I want to do this area, the games. So it's... Alright, so each of these columns has a class called game. So I want to position those relative, because we're going to position these prices absolute inside of the actual image div. So it'll be like right here. Alright, so let's go and create game, and we just want to make sure that we display relative, and I believe that's all we need for the actual game class. Next is the game title, which, do I even have? Yeah, okay, so this is the title. Let me just make sure that that has a class. Okay, so yeah, we have the div class game title around the actual title. Okay, so back to custom CSS, and I want this to align center. And let's see, what else? Let's add some padding, 5 pixels, and give it a background of dark gray, and then make sure the color is white. Alright, so save that. Okay, and we'll take care of that space on the side in a minute. The images, okay, so the game image I want to stretch across 100%. Okay, we want it, what am I doing? So game width 100%, and this actually should be game image. Alright, so you can see it shrunk because it was stretching out of its div. By putting it at 100%, it's going to be 100% of its parent div, alright, which made it match up with the title. Alright, so the price, let's do that now. Game price. And like I said, it's going to be positioned absolute. And let's make it from the bottom, we're going to do 120 pixels, and from the right, we're going to do 15 pixels. And give it a green background. Okay, so background is going to be 3B7E14. And we want to make sure that the color is white. And padding 5 pixels. We'll make the font size bigger. Let's make it 22 pixels, and that should be good for the price. Alright, let's check that out. Alright, so now the price is here. Okay, nice and big. Let's move it down a little bit. I'm going to bring this bottom. Let's see what 100 pixels looks like. Alright, so that looks better. Now, the add to cart button has a class of game add. Okay, so the margin, we're going to do 5 on the top. We want auto on the left and right, and 20 on the bottom. I want to stretch, make sure the width goes 100%, and text align, I want it centered. Alright, so we'll be adding the quantity field in there when we actually create it in the application, but that should be good for now for the products page or the home page. Alright, so this is the detail page, which I'm not going to put too much effort into. It's just a page with the image and description and a button. The page really isn't needed since you can just add them in the products view, but I figured I'd add it. I'm just going to make this price bigger. So details, price. I'm going to make the font size 25 pixels and add a margin bottom of 20 pixels. And then I just want to make sure the image stretches 100% of its parent div. So details image width is going to be 100%. And that should be fine for this page. Alright, so that's fine. So I think that's pretty much it. Like I said, we will have some minor changes to the HTML as we go along. Oh, the footer. I just want to change that. or add to it. So we want footer, and I'm going to give it a dark background. Color will be white. Give it a height of 70. And what else? Text align is going to be center. And also add 20 pixels padding to the top. Alright, so that looks a lot better. So I think we're good for our HTML template. Next we're going to jump into our CodeIgniter application and get going on that. Alright, so now that we have our HTML template finished, we're going to get into the actual CodeIgniter application. And what I'd like to start with is the template. Alright, or the view. When I say view and template or layout, they're basically all the same thing. Alright, so like I said, when you go to a CodeIgniter application, when you type the URL in, you're going to a controller. And you can set a default controller, which by default when you install CodeIgniter is the welcome controller. And that's what we see now. So we're seeing this on the home page, but it can also be accessed like this because we want the controller name here. Alright, now you can easily implement a view inside of a controller. Alright, so let's just open up the welcome controller. So basically there's a lot of comments here. Don't let that overwhelm you. There's only a couple lines of code.
So what we're going to do now that
Alright, so basically what we're doing here is creating an index function inside of our welcome controller. Alright, and the index is basically the default function that gets called. So that's what we're viewing right here. We could also just say /index, and that's going to bring us to the same page. And like I said before, that's how this structure works. Goes controller, function, and then if you want to pass parameters in, you can do that. If you want to pass in a 1, if in fact the index controller takes a parameter. But we could also say public function test, and we could just say echo test. Alright, if we save that and then we go to the welcome controller test function, it's going to do whatever we have in the test function. Alright, so this makes it really easy to create an application or website structure. So that's one of the great things about using a framework like this. Alright, so let's get rid of that. Now, obviously we don't want to echo out stuff from the controller. You definitely don't want to do that. The view is what's used to display content to the user through the browser. Alright, and we can easily load a view with this load view, and then we pass in the name of the file, the view file. And if we go to views, you'll see we have our welcome message, and that's what's being output. Okay, so it's actually really easy once you fully understand how it works. Now, what I like to do and what most people do is create a simple layout system where we'll have some include files like we've been doing this whole time. We use like a header file and a footer file, and then just include it in our view file. So that's what we're going to do. But first I want to get rid of this welcome controller. Alright, so let's go to controllers, and we're going to create a new file, and this is going to be called products.php. Alright, and this is going to be our product controller. Alright, so what we want to do here is say, actually we'll start here, and I'm going to say class products, okay, with a capital P. Your classes should be capital. But to use a controller in CodeIgniter, we need to say extends CI underscore controller, and that's the base controller for CodeIgniter. And you need to include this. All right, so you just want to put extends CI controller. When we create our model, you need to extend CI model. All right, so in here, let's see, what do we want to do? We'll create an index function. All right, and just to test it out, I'm just going to say echo products. Okay, so now on the front end, we should be able to go to the gaming place / products, and takes us to the index function. So what I want to do is I want to make the products controller our default controller, so that when we just go to our application URL, we'll see it. All right, so we can easily do that if we go to the config folder and then routes. I believe it's routes. All right, so right here we have a default controller, welcome. We just want to change this to products. Save that, and then if we reload, we get our products controller. So MVC is just a great design pattern, in my opinion, and it's really easy once you get the hang of it. All right, so obviously for our home page or our products controller, we don't want to just echo out stuff. We want to load a view. All right, but like I said, I like to have kind of a template system. So this is how we're going to load views in this application. Basically, when you load a view, you can say this load view. All right, and what we're going to put in here is our main layout. All right, well, first let me just show you that you can call a view, of course. We can say products if that's a view, and then we want a second parameter, and that's going to be a data array, so we can pass data into the view. All right, let me just, I guess I'll just go with this for a second. So let me save this and then go into the views folder, create a new file called products.php, and this is going to be our view. All right, so let's we'll just say this is the products view. All right, and we're loading it here, so let's save that and then reload. And what's going on is it's showing our template, but we just have an undefined variable data. That's because we haven't created anything yet inside of the data array. But it's easily, we could just do this. We could say data, let's just say data name is equal to Mike. All right, so what we can do here, what we are doing is passing in the data array to the view, and we can access this name variable like this. Let's say echo name. Save it, and we get Mike. All right, so this is very similar to our last project where we created a template class, and we could pass in values to the template or the view. All right, so it's very similar. But like in our last project, we don't want to have our doc type and our head HTML head info in every single view. So we want to create, inside of the views folder, create a new folder and call it includes. And then inside of there, we'll create a new file, call it header.php. And we're also going to create footer.php. And I'm also going to create sidebar.php. Alright, and then inside of the, actually, you know what? This structure's I actually want to create a folder called Layout inside of the Views folder, or Layouts, and I want to move that includes into the Layouts folder. Alright, so that's in there. I can delete this one. Alright, so inside the Layouts folder, I'm going to create a new file and call it main.php. And in this main.php file, we're going to load our header and footer. So I'm going to paste this in. Alright, so all we're doing here is loading a view inside a view. Okay, it's going to give us our header and footer, and then we want to display the main body as well. Okay, so we'll paste this in, and we're just loading a view with a variable called main content, and we're going to define this inside of our controller. Alright, and this will make it so that we can have the header and footer in all of our views, and we don't have to actually type it out in every single view. Alright, so I'm going to save this, and that's it. That's it for main.php. Header, main content, footer. Now, back in our products controller, we're going to do this a little different. We're going to load the view, but we're going to load our main layout. Alright, so this is going to say layouts/main. This should be an L. Alright, so that's going to load the main layout, but what about the products view, which is right here? I'm actually going to get rid of the welcome message view. We still want the products view as well, so right above this, what we're going to do is include that variable, that main content that you saw in the main PHP file, and we're going to set it to whatever we want the view, which in this case is products. So this will give us the products view, but it'll also load the header and the footer. Alright, so if we save this and reload, we get the same thing. We just get Mike, but we're also including the header. Okay, so we can say this is the header, save that, I don't know why it's saying check. That's kind of weird. Let's see if, let me just close this out. We go back in header. This is the header. Alright, so I saved it, reload, and you can see that now the header is being read into the view. So the header is where we're going to put our HTML head area. Alright, so let's actually grab that from our HTML. Okay, so we'll go into the TGP HTML folder, and I'm going to open up index, and we just want to grab the code that we want to include in every single view. Alright, and that's going to be from panel body right here. I believe that's where yeah, so from this panel body all the way to the top, I'm going to copy and paste that in the header. Okay, if we save that, and now over here if we reload, you can see that the header is being read in, and the header file also includes the sidebar stuff for now. We're actually going to create our own sidebar file, but for now it's just in the header. Alright, so we're going to do the same thing but with the footer. So in our index HTML, we want to go all the way down from the ending HTML tag, and we're going to grab it up until this row where you see the row. So basically it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 divs above the row class here. Alright, so let's copy that and put that in footer and save that, and that's all we should need with footer. Alright, so sidebar, let's open that up and go back to header, and we just want to grab all the sidebar content. So So we're going to go from this cart block div. Let's go down, and let's see, I want to go down to this UL. Alright, so cart block div down to the UL. Basically everything that's in this column 4 div, because that's actually the entire sidebar. So we'll cut that out. I'm going to paste it inside of sidebar.php, save that, close it, and then all we need to do is include that file inside of header.php where we cut it out of. Alright, so we're just going to paste in this load view, and we're going to point to that sidebar file. Okay, so let's save that, and I'm going to change this latest releases header. I'm just going to change it to the gaming place for now. You can make this dynamic so that it changes on every page, or you could just leave it with a general title like that. Okay, so let's save header. Now if we go back, one second, what's this? Layouts include sidebar. Oh, we forgot I forgot the D in sidebar. Alright, that should fix that. Alright, so we have our header, we have our products view, and then the footer. So you can see that the CSS is not included here, so we need to do that. So let's go to, you want to go to the application. So in my case it's in my C drive, XAMPP, HT docs, the gaming place. Actually what we want to do here is create a new folder in the root and call it assets. Alright, and this is going to hold our publicly accessible documents like our CSS files, our images, things like that. Alright, so in assets, let's do CSS and images, and then what we want to do is bring over from our HTML folder, we want to bring over our CSS files. Alright, and also let's also create a JavaScript folder as well, and bring over that bootstrap JavaScript file. And then in images, I'm actually going to create a folder in images and call it products, because this is where all of our games or product images will be held. Okay, I think that's good. Now, in order to include them in our header file, the CSS files here, we need to point it to the right place. Alright, so in CodeIgniter, there's a global function you can use, you can echo out, called base_URL. And basically this is going to give us whatever our base URL is. In my case, the base URL is localhost/thegamingplace. I'm sorry, actually this is going to actually include the application directory as well, I believe. Oh, no, so that's wrong. So it's going to our root, and then we want to go in our assets and then in CSS. Okay, so right after this, we're going to say assets/CSS. Now you don't need to put a slash here like this, because the base URL function actually includes the slash, so you don't need that. So let's copy this, and we want to do the same thing with our custom file. Alright, and that should now load the CSS. Or not. Alright, so call to undefined function base URL. And the reason this is happening is we haven't loaded the URL helper. Okay, so CodeIgniter has a bunch of helpers that we're going to use, but you need to load them. And I'm not going to load them manually inside of our controller. I'm going to go to our autoload config file, which is in config autoload. And then down here, actually we have a bunch of stuff we want to put in here. So in this area, this array, the autoload helper, okay, we want to put the helpers that we want to use, which is URL. We're also going to use the form validation helper. And what else? I think we're going to use the HTML helper. Alright, and then for libraries, for now, let's do the database library. Session, we're going to use the session library. And I guess we can leave it like that for now. I'm sure there's more we'll need to add later. So if we save that, reload. Alright, so we're not using form validation right now, so it's giving us, maybe that's not how it is, how you write it. I'm just going to take these out for now until we actually need them. So just the URL helper. Same thing with the session. Let's just get rid of that for now. Alright, so here is our entire view. You can see we have the header, and then the main products view is just placed inside of the main area. Alright, the sidebar is coming from that sidebar.php file. So we have our template completely set up, and all we need to do with different views is include them in our controller, and then they'll show up in this main area. Alright, so what we're going to do right now is deal with our products controller. And we're also going to take a look at models, because models is where the classes go that deal with data, that deal with the database. So if we want to fetch all the products in the database in the products controller, then we need to reach into the products model and get it, and then pass it to the view. Alright, so ultimately that's how MVC works. So let's open up controllers, products. I'm actually going to delete the welcome controller. We don't need that anymore. Alright, so this is the code that we had in the last video. We were just passing the data name value of Mike into the products view. Obviously that's not what we want. What we do want to do is fetch all products. So we'll say get all products. Alright, now we need, like I said, we need to get them from the model, but we're going to store them in the data array because that's what's going to be passed to our view. So we're going to say data products is going to be equal to this this product underscore model, and then we'll call it get products. Alright, so what this is essentially doing is it's going to look inside of the product model, and it's going to look for the get products function that we're going to create. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up, let's go in models, and we actually need to create it. So we're going to create a new file, and we need to call this product underscore model.php. Typically a controller is usually plural. We have the products controller, and then we have the product model, which is singular. And it doesn't have to be that way. That's just a really common naming convention with CodeIgniter. Alright, so what we're going to do is, just like the controller, we're going to create a class, and it's going to be called product underscore model, and we need extends CI underscore model. Alright, so let's create our get products function or method. And you'll see some real similarities with this and our last project. So public function. Now the reason that I'm using underscores instead of camel case, in the last project I probably would have done this, get products camel case, but CodeIgniter has a convention of using underscores, so when I use CodeIgniter, I usually use underscores. Totally optional. If you want to use camel case, that's fine. I just like to kind of match the rest of the code. Alright, so CodeIgniter uses what's called active record, which is kind of a shorthand way to deal with the database. Alright, so I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to say this DB. Okay, this should look really familiar because this is kind of what we did in the last project, except we said this DB query, and then we put in whatever, select all, whatever. And you absolutely can do this with CodeIgniter, but we can also use active record, and we can use this DB select, and then pass in what we want to select, which is going to be all. So we'll just pass in the asterisk, and then we can go down on the next line and say this DB from products. Alright, so just kind of a different way to deal with the database, and I actually like this way. I like using active record. And then we're going to create a query variable and set that to this DB get, and then we're going to return query result. Alright, so that'll return us the result rows. So save that. Alright, so what we're doing is taking what we returned from that function in the model and storing it into the data array, into the products key. And then we're passing the data array to the view, and then we can use this array, this returned array, inside of our view. So let's open up views and then products, and we can then use that product variable in a for each loop because it's an array. So we can say PHP for each products as product. Okay, and then here we could say PHP echo product, and this is going to be in object-oriented form, so we want to use this arrow, and then we can actually take any of the field names from our database. Let me just go to PHP MyAdmin. Okay, so if we go to databases and gaming place and products, we can now get any of these fields that we want. Let's grab the title. Okay, so product title, and let's also just add a line break after every title. So now if we go back and reload, undefined variable products for each products as product. Alright, I think the issue is we haven't loaded the model. You need to load your models just like your libraries and helpers. So we can either define it in our controller, or we can auto-load it. So I'm just going to go to my auto-load in my config folder, and you want to go down to models, and you just want to put in the name of the model. So quotes, and then we want to put product underscore model. Alright, so save that, reload, and now we have the titles printing out. And we can grab whatever we want. We can get the description, we can get the image path, anything in the products table. So basically what I'm going to do is go back to my HTML. I'm going to open up index.html, and I want to grab just one list item. I'm sorry, they're not in lists, but just one game. So from, let's see, this call for game, okay, that has the game class. I just want to grab that because that's what I want to repeat. Okay, so copy that and go back to your view, and I'm just going to overwrite this. Alright, so what we're going to do now is for each game or product that's found in the products table, it's going to spit this out. Okay, so if there's 10 games in there, this will iterate 10 times. But of course we want to change this content, or else we just have 10 Destiny games. We want each and every game we have in our table, so we need to replace this with dynamic content. So PHP echo product title. Okay, so that's the title. Let me copy that up here. I'll grab the price, the image. Okay, I'm going to change the image name to product image, and let's see, I think that's it. Actually, the images path we have to change. We'll use the base URL, so PHP echo base URL function, and then it's going to go to the assets folders /images/products/ Alright, and the link, obviously we don't want it to go to product HTML. We want it to go to the details page, which we haven't created yet. So let's just put the link in there. I'm going to replace this product HTML. Okay, so we'll say base URL, and then products/details / and then we want to echo out the product ID. So echo product ID. Alright, so let's take a look. Alright, so all these games are being pulled from the database. Now I'm going to change the code up a little bit for the buttons. Alright, so I'm going to replace it with a form. So in this game add div, I want to just go over this button. I'm going to replace it with a small form. Alright, so it's a post form. It's going to go to base URL /cart, so it's going to go to the cart controller, and then the add function in the cart controller, which we did not create yet. Quantity, so we're going to have an input for quantity. We're going to have a couple hidden inputs because we need to pass this info to the cart. Okay, so we have the item number, the price, and the title of the product, and then just a submit button or an add to cart button. Alright, so let's save that, check it out. Alright, so we just need to format this a little better. The prices, I'm going to move those up. The quantity input box should be shorter than that because I want it to go side by side with the cart button. So let's go into our CSS file, which is in the root, and then go to Assets, CSS, Custom, and it has a class of quantity, QTY, so I'm going to paste this in here. Alright, so we're going to make the input box 40 pixels wide, dark gray for the color, and center the text. Alright, so save that, reload, Alright, so that looks a little better. I do want to move the price up, so let's go to the price, game price right here, and it's an absolute positioned element, so from the bottom I want to go to 120. Alright, so that looks better. And let's just add, just put a line break after this quantity is separated from the cart. Go right here. Alright, so that's not working. Actually, in the CSS, let's just put a margin bottom for the quantity. That should work. There we go. Alright, so we just need to move the price up a little more. So game price from the bottom, let's do 130. Let's go a little higher. Let's do 145. There we go. Alright, so next thing I want to do is we want to click on this on a game, and it's going to take us to the products controller, the details function, and then we're going to pass in the ID of the game. Alright, and that should bring us to a details page and show our details template. So let's do that now. So in the product controller, I'm going to create public function details, and this is going to take in a parameter. It's going to take in an ID. Say get product details from the model. So we're going to create a value in our data array. Alright, and we'll give the key product, and then that's going to go to this product model, and we're going to create a method called get product details, and we have to pass in this ID to it. Alright, so then when we get that, we're just going to load a view. So I'm going to copy this, and we want the details view for this. Alright, so let's go create this function. Let's just copy it. Go to product model and say get single product. Alright, so here we're going to use active record again. In fact, I'm just going to copy this and then change it up. Okay, so we want to select all from products, and then we need to put in a where clause. So we can say this db where. Alright, and what we want to do is the field that we want to search is ID in the database, and we want to match it with our variable ID, which is getting passed in here. And ultimately this ID is coming in through the URL. Okay, you can see here it's going to 1, product 2, it's going to 2. Alright, where ID equals ID, and then same thing, we're going to do query equals this db get, except now we're going to return a row because this is only a single row, it's a single product. So save that, and this should be all set. So now all we need to do is our details template, or view, I should say details view. So in application, views, I'm going to create a new file and call it details.php. Alright, so what I want to do is grab the HTML. Did we create that page? Oh, we called it product, that's right. So let's open that HTML up, and we want to get this right here, this row details. We want that all the way to, actually let me see where that div ends. Alright, so we're going to get from here to here. Copy that, paste it in the details view. Alright, so right now it's just static data. We obviously want to switch that up for our dynamically generated data. Let me just clean this up a little bit. I don't think Notepad++ has a format option, which they should. Well, maybe they do. Alright, so let's save it just to make sure that the view's being read. So if we click on Watchdogs, it goes to our static content. Okay, we don't want Call of Duty, that's not the game we chose. So what we need to do is just replace this stuff. So we'll start with the title. Okay, and we're just going to say PHP echo product title. Okay, let's see that. Make sure that that changed. Okay, so it changed to Watchdogs, which is getting from the database. Let's put in the price. Let's just copy this. Okay, the description. I want to replace this text. Description. And the last thing I'm going to do is replace this form. I'm going to paste this in, and basically it's doing the same thing. It's adding it to our cart. It's going to the cart controller, the add function, and then it's bringing in the quantity, item number, price, title, and you can see that those are all coming from here. They're coming from the model in the database. Alright, so let's save that. Reload. Looks good, except for the image. We just got to change the image tag, the image location. Let me just copy it from products. Whoops, that wasn't right. We wanted to go to assets/images/products. Okay, and there we go. Actually, wait a minute. No, we don't go. We still have the static image in there, the static image name. We got to replace that. Echo product image. There we go. Alright, so we have our products. You know what? I'm going to go to the header include and make it so we can actually use these links. So in layouts, includes, header, was the navigation. I'm going to change this to just my base URL. Okay, and then for the home, same thing. And for create an account, I'm going to have it go to user/register, which we'll create in a little bit. So now we should be able to use this. Okay, register is not there yet. Alright, so our products, as far as our display, our product display is pretty much complete. So in the next video, I want to have these, right now these categories are just static. I want these to be pulled from the database as well as the most popular. Alright, and then what I want to do is work on the cart class, so we can actually add these to our cart, and we can update and go to the cart, edit it, change the quantity, things like that. So we'll get into that next. Okay guys, now we're going to get into, we want the categories in the sidebar to be automatically generated, and also the most popular. Now, since this is located in basically a partial, the sidebar, and you could say the same for the header and the footer, we don't really have a controller for that unless you want to put code in every single controller where this is going to be on that page. But what I do in situations like this is use a helper. Alright, and that's exactly what we did in the last project for the sidebar. We had a helper to fetch categories from the database. Alright, so let's go to our Notepad++, and just want to close a couple things here for now. First of all, you have to auto-load, or not auto-load, but you have to load your helpers. So in the auto-load config file, I'm going to go up to helpers, and I'm just going to add to it here. And it's going to be called the DB helper. So I'm just going to put DB. And we'll probably use the form helper as well. So let me put that in as well. Alright, so I'll save that. Now I'm going to go to my folder, my application folder, and inside the helpers folder I'm going to create a new file and call it db_helper.php. Okay, now helpers are not classes, they're just groups of functions, so we don't have to worry about encapsulation or anything like that. These are basically just separate functions. Okay, so let's add a little comment here. Get categories. Alright, so this is going to be function. We don't need public or private or anything like that. Function get underscore categories underscore H. And the H, the underscore H isn't needed. It's just something that I do just to know that it's a helper function. Feel free to call it what you want. Now, since we're not in a library, we're not in a controller or a model, so if we want to deal with the database, or a model rather, you don't directly deal with the database in a helper. You actually connect to the model. But we can't say like this product model. We can't do that. What we need to do is get an instance, because we're not directly in a controller. So to do that, we want to create a variable. I use CI, alright, for Code Igniter, and I'm going to say equals get underscore instance. Alright, and that'll bring a controller, a Code Igniter instance into this function. And then we can do things like CI, we'll say CI, actually let's create a variable first. Categories, let me get rid of this. Categories equals CI product model get categories, and then just return categories. Alright, so usually you'd see this DB, you'd see this, the THIS keyword, this, but since we're in a helper, we can't use that. We need to get an instance to a variable and then use that as an object to access our models and so forth. So obviously right now we need to create the get categories method inside of the product model. So let's save that, go to the product model, okay, so here we'll say public function get categories. This should be a really easy function. I'm just going to actually copy the get products. It's basically the same thing, just a different table. Alright, so I'm going to change products to categories. And everything else should be the same, so let's save that, and then we should be able to, in our products, in our sidebar file, we should be able to access the helper function, which will access the model, which will access the database. Alright, so let's go to Views, Layouts, Includes, Sidebar, and find the categories. Alright, so categories are right here. So under this UL, I am going to say PHP for each. We want to say for each get categories H as category, and we only need to take one of these, and PHP end for each. Okay, and now I'm going to get rid of all these. So for every category in the database, it's going to spit out a list item, and of course we want to make this dynamic, so let's replace this with PHP echo category name. Okay, let's see if that works. Okay, so we're getting an error. Undefined variable get categories H. Alright, so this is actually our helper function. It shouldn't have a $sign. And let's make sure that's the name of it. Get categories H. Yep. Alright, let's try that. And there we go. Now you can see that these are being pulled from the database. Now basically I want these to link to the products controller. And actually I'm going to have them go to products/category. So let's just add that as a link to each category title. So we'll say PHP echo base URL, and then it's going to go to products/category / and then the category ID. Alright, so let's make sure that that does that. Products category 2. Alright, good. So now what we want to do is, under most popular, right now it looks like it just has the category names, but what we want is listings from our orders table. Okay, so we don't have any orders now, so I'm just going to throw in some. Let me just log in here. And I want to go to orders and then insert. And let me just fill in some stuff. Product 1, user 1, transaction ID can be 0, quantity 1, price $59.99, address 55 Main Street, Boston, Massachusetts, 01951. Alright, so we have an order in there. So what we want to do is we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use a helper function. So in DB help, in DB helper, I'm just going to paste in a simple function. Alright, so get popular H, and same thing, we're going to get an instance, and then we're going to call this get popular function in the model, and then just return the products. Alright, so let's save that, and then go to product model, and I'm just going to paste this in. Alright, so with this example, we're actually using it like how our last project did. We're actually putting in the query. We're not just using this this style of active record. Okay, we're actually saying select. Wait a minute. Never mind. We are using the same kind of syntax. Select P dot. What we're doing though is we're kind of using placeholders, or not placeholders, aliases. We're saying select orders as O, products as P. That way we can differentiate fields by table. So O.product.id is pertaining to the orders database. P.id is pertaining to the products database. Because what we're doing is selecting products, but we're selecting orders, but we're joining in the products table so that we can actually have things like the product title, things like that available to us. And then we're just saying we want to group by product ID. And then, of course, we're just going to order by total, which is going to be the number of records returned. I'm sorry, not the number of records returned, but the number of instances for each product. If you have a product that has been ordered 5 times, and then you have a product that's been ordered once, the one that was ordered 5 times is going to be at the top of the list. That's what we mean with this order. Alright, so hopefully that was somewhat clear. So I'm going to save that, and in our sidebar, you can go down to this most popular, and I'm just going to overwrite this entire unordered list, make it smaller. So actually we're saying for each, get popular as popular, and then we're just spitting out the title. Alright, and we can actually have a link to the actual product, so let's do that. Base URL, and then it's going to go to products / details / and then we want the ID, so PHP echo popular ID. Alright, so if we reload that, now you can see most popular. We only have one order, so that's what's showing up, is the Destiny game. Alright, and if we click on that, it takes us to the details page. So that's the most popular. And I think that's good for now. In the next video, I want to get into, we're going to create the cart controller so that we can actually add products to our cart, and then ultimately we're going to use a PayPal class to actually bring the customer to PayPal to make payment. Alright guys, here's where it's going to get a little complicated. We're going to implement the shopping cart so that when we click this, we select a quantity, click add to cart, and it'll get added to the cart. Now CodeIgniter actually has a cart library that we'll be using. Let me just pull it up. Okay, so shopping cart class. Alright, so basically you want to load the library. You can either do this, or you can add it to your autoloader, which is what we'll do. And you can add an item to your cart, And we do that by creating an array. Okay, so here we have an array with an ID, a quantity, a price, a name, and then options. Okay, and then we're passing that data into the cart class, so we're going to say this cart insert. Alright, and basically what that does is creates a session with a session array and works with that. And it does that all behind the scenes. We only deal with the cart object. Alright, so everything else is pretty much taken care of for us. Alright, to display the cart, okay, so to display it, you want to loop through this here, this cart contents as items. Then what you can do is, for each product, you can display its name, things like that, options if you have them. Here it shows you how to update the cart. Okay, the syntax is pretty simple. This cart update, and you just throw in your data array. Alright, and there's some more information here as well. I'd suggest going over it. I mean, if you like this project and you like CodeIgniter, you like the design pattern, you like MVC, I would definitely suggest that you do some hardcore reading at the CodeIgniter user guide site. You can basically find whatever you want. If you pull down this table of contents, any library, helper, class, whatever, it has it all. Alright, so ultimately, if we click add to cart, it's going to go to the cart controller and then the add function or method. So that's what we need to create. So let's go ahead and go into controllers in your application folder and create a new file, and I'm going to call this cart.php. And I said before that a common practice is for controllers to be named plural and models to be singular, but there are exceptions. I wouldn't use carts as a controller name. That just doesn't sound right. There's only one shopping cart on the site, so it only makes sense to have it singular. So you don't have to really stick to that, only when it makes sense. You know, so let's create this class cart extends CI controller. Alright, now we're actually going to have some class properties, which is different from our other controllers. We haven't had that yet. So the first one is going to be public, and it's going to be called PayPal_data, and that's just going to be set to empty for now. And basically that's just going to be it's going to be an array for PayPal to use to be able to move on to the transaction on the PayPal site. And there's going to be quite a bit in this class, especially the process function, where I can't explain every little bit. It's just what PayPal needs for its API to be able to add every single individual product to PayPal, so that you can log into PayPal and see every product, not just the total of your order. Alright, so the next one that we want is going to be tax. Public, we want shipping, and these can be set. I'm going to make it so that you can set these in the configuration file. It's not going to be an advanced shopping cart with weights and things like that. You're just going to have a global tax and global shipping amount. Alright, so then we have total, which I'm going to set to 0, and then we're going to have grand total. Grand total is going to include tax and shipping, things like that. Alright, next we want our index. Alright, so cart index, And basically all we want to do here is load the cart view. So I'm just going to say public function index, and I'm going to just paste this in. It's just going to load the cart view, and we might as well create that now. If we go to views and then create a new file called cart.php. And I'm not going to put anything in there right now. I'm actually going to go back to the controller. Alright, and next is probably the most important cart function, which is add. Alright, so public function add. Alright, so we need to create an array for item data. Okay, data equals array, and let's see, it's going to have an ID, and this is going to be, I'm going to grab it from the post. When we submit the add to cart form, if you remember, we had a couple hidden inputs for the item number, the quantity, the title, and the price. So we're going to get it from the post variables. And in CodeIgniter, you don't use this. I mean, you could, but you don't really use something like this. Use the post superglobal. You can actually use this way. So we can say this input. Alright, so we can use the input library, post, and then whatever the post name is. In this case, I think it's item number. And we can actually check that if we go to the products view. And this is the form here that's being submitted, and you can see that this hidden value called item number is going to be equal to the product ID. Alright, so this is where our post is coming from. Okay, so that's the ID, or the item number. Next we have the quantity, and that's going to be this input post QTY. Alright, and then next we'll do the price. Okay, price is also coming in from post. And one final is the name. And in our database, the field is actually called title. So I think that's what I used on the form. Let me check. Yeah, we're using title. Okay, so still keep this name, but here we're going to have input post title. So that is our data array, and if we want to test this, we can say print r and pass in data. Alright, and let's just do a die afterwards. Okay, so if we go back, reload, and let's say we add one Watch Dogs game to our cart. Alright, let's see, unexpected tax, expecting variable, what? Oh, we don't have our dollar signs in front of our variables. Alright, let's try that again. Alright, so you can see I submitted the form. I added watchdogs, which is the ID of 3. I said 1 quantity, shows the price, the name, so that's exactly what we want. And if I change this to 3, you can see that now the quantity has changed to 3. So what we want to do with this info is insert it into the cart. So that's what we'll do. Let's just comment this print R out in case we want to use it again. And next we want to insert into cart. Alright, so this is easy. All we need to do is say this cart insert and just pass in that data. Alright, and then we can just redirect to products. Alright, so if we reload, if I click add to cart, call to a, oh, we didn't load the cart library, so let's go to our config auto load, and for libraries, after database, I'm going to do cart. Hopefully that works. Oh, okay, so in order to use the cart, you need to use sessions. In order to use sessions, you have to have an encryption key in your config file, which we don't. So let's just add that. If we go to config/config.php, go down to sessions. Where is it? Okay, and right here, encryption key. And you can put whatever you want. And then save it, and that should be good. Okay, so we added it to the cart, but there's no way for us to see that. What I want to do now is update this cart block so that it'll loop through our cart items. So let's go to the sidebar, and where our cart is right here. It's this table. Alright, so we're going to leave the headings. I'm going to actually go from here to here and paste this in. Alright, so basically we're setting a counter here, so I equals 1, and then we're going to loop through the cart contents like this. Alright, and we'll say as items, then we can use that items variable in here. And what you do have to have is an input, a hidden input, with the name equal to this right here, alright, which is the row ID, and then the value will be this items row ID. So just make sure you have that in there. And there's more on this at the CodeIgniter documentation site. But then what we're doing is pretty much echoing out quantity, the items, yeah, the value is going to be the quantity, the name of the product, the price, and then down here it'll give us the total. Okay, so this cart format number and this cart total, which will give us the total. Alright, so let's see if that works. Save it, reload, and you can see that the item that we added is there. Alright, so let's say we want to add 2 Destiny games. Now you can see it's there. It has the price of the individual item along with the quantity, and then for the total it takes 2, you know, whatever the quantity is, and adds all the products and comes up with the total. Now, we can actually edit products in our cart block. So I can change this to 1 and then say update cart. Well, that actually we didn't set that yet. Let's do that now. So in our cart controller, we want an update function. And this is actually a really simple function. Just paste that in. And this in cart here, you can actually just kind of, I'm going to leave it there, but you can ignore it for now. It just has to do with if you're actually updating it from within this block or in the actual cart page. Because if you're in this block, then it's going to redirect you wherever you are at that point. If you're in the cart and you update, you want to be still in the cart page. So that's what that's for. Just leave it for now. So we're taking all the post data and putting it into the data variable, and then we're passing that variable to the cart update function. And that'll update the cart for us, and then we're just going to kind of refresh the page. Alright, so let's save that. Change this to 1, hit update, and now you can see there's only 1, and the price has also gone down. Now we have nothing on in our cart view, that's why there's nothing right here. So let's do that now. Alright, so let's go to cart view. This is in your views folder. And I'm actually going to paste this entire view in. Very similar to the HTML that we did in the UI section. But we have, first we're saying if this cart contents. So this is checking if there's anything in the cart. Alright, and then down here we'll say else there are no items in your cart. Alright, so if there's nothing in there, it's just going to give you this message. If there is, we're going to open a form. It's going to go to our process function in our cart controller, which we haven't created yet, which is kind of advanced, and I won't get to explain every single thing, but I'll have the code for you. And then down here, we're just looping through cart contents, just like we did in the sidebar. Alright, so it's essentially the same thing as what we're doing here. We just want it on the page. We are using the items variable to get things like quantity, the product name, things like that. Let's see, and then we have our shipping, which is going to be shipping and tax are going to be in a config file. That's why we're using this config object. Okay, so shipping, tax, and then total, and then we'll just have a we're going to have a form here for address, things like that, but it should only be shown if the user is logged in. That's why we have this session user data. We haven't done this yet. We haven't even created our user class. So I'm going to get rid of this for now, and we'll put that back in later. Alright, so let's see if the cart shows up. Alright, so there's our cart. You can see it has the games, has the quantity, price. It's nicely formatted, and if you're happy with that, then you'll move on to putting your address in, and you'll be logged in. So the system will already know your user ID, it'll know your name, it'll know your email, things like that. But unless you purchase a product, the system doesn't have your address. Alright, so that's why the form. So I think that's good for now. What we have to get into next is two major aspects. One is the PayPal, the processing, using the PayPal library, and then also users. We haven't created user registration or login functionality yet, so that's something that we will get into as well. Alright guys, so now that we have our basic cart set up, I want to move on, because to be able to check out, you need to be logged in, and we haven't created the user controller yet or any user functions. so that we can actually check out. So we're going to do that now. And the first method that I want to work on is the register method in the user controller. Alright, so let's go ahead and open up your text editor, and inside of controllers we're going to create a new file, and I'm going to call it users.php. Alright, and we're just going to set up a class. We need our PHP tags. So class users extends CI underscore controller. Alright, so the users controller isn't going to have an index method. We're not going to go to the gaming place / user. Alright, so that's not going to do anything, but we do want a register function, so it should go to user / register. Alright, so let's go ahead and create a view. So if we go back into the views folder and create a new file and call this register.php, and we'll just say this is register. Alright, now back in the users controller, let's say public function register. Alright, and I'm just going to paste in a view, or load a view. Alright, so this is going to load the register view, but if we save it and reload, it's not coming up, and one of the reasons is we have to load the user's controller or user's library. Alright, so let's do that in the autoload file, which is in the config folder. Down here, actually, you know what? We don't have to load it. I don't believe. No, we don't. And the reason this isn't working is because this should be users plural. Alright, so now we can see that this is the register view. Alright, so now let's go ahead and input the HTML into the register view. So if we go to our HTML template that we created and open up register HTML, and we just want to grab the form. So from here down to the closing form tag, copy that and paste that right in the view. Alright, and there's some things we want to change here. Of course, we need to add an action to the form. So we'll say method is going to be post, and action, we're going to echo out the base URL first of all. And then it's going to go to, where is it going to go? Users / register. Okay, so we can save that, and let's make sure that shows up, which it does. Now this is where I'm going to introduce you to the form validation library. Alright, so that's what we can use to do virtually any kind of form validation. We can check required fields, we can check for valid email addresses, we can make sure that the passwords match, we can make sure, say, username is 8 or more characters, pretty much anything. And if you want to read more about the class, there's some really good documentation on it. Alright, so it gives you the syntax. And in your view, obviously you want to display the errors. So if someone leaves out a required field, you want it to say, well, this field's required. And it's very easy to add that functionality. All you need to do is add this line to your template or to your view. So let's do that now. I'm just going to copy that and then go to register, my register view, and right above form, I'm just going to paste that. Now, one cool thing about this is if you don't want to just have just the text there, you can actually wrap every error inside of a div or whatever element you'd like. So you can just pass that in here. Alright, so I'm passing this in, and what it's going to do is wrap all of the errors with the div and then danger, which if you're familiar with Bootstrap, you know what that is. It's just going to make it red, pretty much, give it a red background. Alright, so that's all we need to do for our errors to be able to display to the user. Okay, so let's save that. And I just want to make sure everything else is all set here. Make sure you have all your names. Even the button should have a name. Okay, we'll call that submit. Alright, so I'm going to save that because I don't believe we need this file again. So I'll close that out. Alright, so if we go back to our CodeIgniter documentation, let's see. You need to load two things. You need to load the URL helper and load the form validation library. And I'm not a fan of loading it like this. I like to use the autoloader. So let's go to our config folder and then the autoload. And down in libraries, we just want to add form validation. And then we can use it. And the helper, looks like we already have the URL helper, so that's fine. So let's save that. Alright, so now we don't need to include these. Alright, so what we want to do is when we go to the register page, we want to make sure, well, we want to see if the form has been submitted or not, because obviously we don't want to validate if nobody's submitted the form, and you can do that with this if statement right here. So basically, if the form validation, if it's false, if it hasn't ran, then you're just going to load the view. If it has ran, then you can do all your whatever, database insertions, whatever. So I'm going to copy that, get rid of that, and you want to go to the register function, and I'm just going to paste this in. Alright, so the view that we have here, let's just cut that. I'm going to cut it and then paste it right in here and overwrite this load view. Alright, so if the validation and the form haven't been submitted, okay, it's just going to give us a view. So let's make sure that works. Alright, good. So let's go back. So now what we need to do is set our rules, our validation rules. Alright, so we're going to do this above this if statement. Whoops. Okay, so how we do this is we're going to say this form validation set underscore rules. Alright, and then we have a few parameters here. The first one is going to be the field name, so let's do the first name field. The second is going to be a readable name, so first name. And this is what's used in the message, so make sure that it's human readable. And then the last one is going to be a set of options, which are going to be the rules. Alright, and if we go back to that CodeIgniter page, scroll down all the way to the bottom, you can see all the rules that are available. So we have required, okay, so it's going to make sure that something's entered there, matches, is unique, you can do minimum and maximum length, numeric, alpha, greater than, less than, all kinds of things, valid email, so you can basically validate anything. Alright, so this is what goes in that options area, and there's also one that I like to use called trim, which will take off any excess white space. Alright, so let's do that. Let's add in the options that we want to use here. So I'm going to do trim, and then to separate these you want to use a pipe. Okay, so trim, this is required, another pipe, and let's give this a max length. We'll do a max length of 20. Alright, and actually we can do a minimum length as well. Let's do that too. So min length, and let's say 5. Actually, it's a name. We'll say 2, because some people might have a really short name. Alright, and make sure they're separated by pipes. So let's just go ahead and test this one rule. Alright, so if we reload and I try to submit, you can see the first name field is required. Now, this whole thing shouldn't turn red, so we must have some kind of conflict with our divs. Let me see. Let's go back to Views, Register, Div Class Alert. Okay, I think we need to add in the closing div as well here. Save that, and let's go ahead and try this again. Hold on, let me reload. It's working here, it's just that the div is above it. Actually, you know what? The first div should be its own parameter, and then comma, and then the second div. So that should work, hopefully. Okay, so create an account. The link for creating an account is wrong, so we'll change that in a little bit. It goes to user, it should be users. Alright, so let's submit. And there we go. The first name field is required. So let's go ahead and add the rest of our rules. Alright, so I'm going to paste these in. Alright, so let's go through each of these. We have the last name field, which is, we're doing the same thing. Trim, required. You know what, I'm going to leave the min and max length off of both first name and last name. I just wanted to show you how we could do that. Okay, so email, we're doing trim, required, and also valid email, which will make sure that it's a formatted email address. Next we have the username. Alright, so trim required, and also a minimum length of 4. Let's see, username, looks like we have that twice. Yeah, let's get rid of this first one. Alright, so next we have the password, and this is where we can use the matches. Alright, so password, whatever, min length, max length, and then password 2 is going to have this matches password, and that's just going to validate that password 2 is equal to password 1. Okay, and then if it passes, then whatever we put down here will happen. Alright, and let's just test it out. We'll say echo, it's all good. Alright, so let's go ahead and reload this. If we try to submit, you see we have a whole bunch of errors. Okay, so let's try to pass all the validations. Register, and you can see that we've passed. Alright, so that's how form validation works. I really like how they do this. I think it's super easy and makes your forms and overall website more secure. Alright, so now since we passed validation, what we want to do is go through the user model and register the user. Okay, so I'm going to paste this in. And we're just saying if user model register, okay, so this is a function we'll create inside of the user model. If it's true, then what we're going to do here is say this session get flash data. Now flash data is what CodeIgniter uses so that you can actually set a message and redirect to a new page and then still have that message to echo out onto the page. Okay, so it uses sessions to do that. So the flash data parameters, it takes two parameters. One is just the name of the flash data. So you can grab onto this inside products where we're going to be redirecting to, and you can actually echo out this message. Okay, so the name and then the message. So we're just going to call it registered, and it's just going to say you are now registered and can log in. Alright, so all we need to do now is create this register function inside of the user model. So let's go do that. If we go to models, we need to create a new file, and we're going to call it user model.php. And remember, we have to load models, so I'm going to go to my config auto load file and go down to models. Okay, we have our product model there. Now we just want to add user model. Save that. Alright, now in here we're going to say class. I don't know why it keeps adding that function. Okay, so PHP class equals, not equals, class user model extends CI underscore model. Alright. And let's see, we want a register function. So public function register. No parameters. And now we're just going to create a data array equal to all the post fields from the form that we submitted. Alright, so data array first name is going to equal whatever we type in first name, last name, email, username, password. Now this password I'm actually going to wrap in MD5. I'm pretty sure that CodeIgniter has ways to encrypt passwords, but I'm just going to do this just for simplicity. Alright, so we have the data with all the information we want to insert. So now what I'm going to do is create an insert variable and equal it to this db insert. Okay, so we're using active record, and then we want to insert this into the users table. Alright, and then the next parameter is going to be our data array. And then we're simply going to return insert. Okay, and if it goes through, this function will return true. Well, actually, it will return true. If not, it will return false. And that's why we're testing it right here. Alright, so make sure everything's saved. And let's go ahead and try this. I already have my info there. Okay. Oh, one more thing. We're setting this flash data, but we also need to put it in the template or in the view where we want it to spit out. So that is products. So we want to go to views, products, and I'm going to paste this in. Alright, so to echo the flash data, we need to just say echo this session flash data and then the name. Alright, but I want to add an alert around it. I want to add a div tag around it, so I'm using the if statement, which is saying if this flash data is set, then spit out the divs and the actual message. Okay, so let's save that and try to register. Class user model not found. Okay, class user model extends CI model. I'm not sure what happened there. Make sure everything is saved. And then we'll try again. Let's go back. test. Alright, so you are now registered and can log in. So if we go to our database, and let's see, click on users, you can now see we have our test user, so that worked beautifully. And you can see our password is also encrypted. So our registration functionality is complete. Next, we will do the login and log out. Hey guys, now that we can register, we're going to create login and log out functionality. Okay, so first thing I want to do is look at this form, this login form up here, which is in our header. So if we're in views, we can go to layouts, includes, header, and let's just make sure it's going to the right place, which it's not. So as you can see, we have our form tag, but we have no action. So this is going to be method equals post, and then action. We're going to use the base URL. And it's going to go to the user's controller and then login. Alright, so that should do it. Make sure you have the name username, name password, submit. Alright, so save that. Actually, one more thing I wanted to do here in the header is this create account link. It's going to user/register. It should actually be users, plural. Alright, so save that. Okay, now we can get out of here. And we're going to go to the user's controller and create a new function. And I would suggest that you fully comment your code, especially your methods and your classes. I'm not doing every single method with a comment just to save time, but it's just good practice. Alright, so login, we're going to do the same thing that we did with register. We're going to use the form validation class. I'm just going to copy this for username and password. And then here I'm going to paste that in. For username, trim is good, required is good, minimum and max, fine. Same thing with password, except we don't need actually we don't even have matches. Yeah, so that's fine. Alright. So I'm going to grab the input, the username and password, and put them in a variable. So username is equal to this input post username. And I think I have already told you, but this here is the exact same as using this. Okay, so if you've used this, you're familiar with post superglobals. It's the same exact thing. This is just CodeIgniter's version using the input library, which is a little more secure as well. Alright, so now let's get the password. And this is going to be encoded in MD5. That's how it is in the database, so that's how it is when we want to match it. And this should be password. Alright, so next we're going to use the user model. I'm going to create a variable called user ID, and that's going to equal to this user model login, and we're going to pass in our username and password. Alright, and then down here I'm going to paste this in to save time, and I'll just explain. So basically we're assigning the return value of the login function from in the model to user ID. If this runs and works and whatever, it matches, this will equal the user ID. If it doesn't, then this will equal false. So we're checking it here. All right, so if this model login function works, then this will run. If not, then this will run. All right, so what we're doing here is creating a data array with the user ID, the username, and we're also setting this logged in to true. So this logged in is what we're going to check when we want to see if the user is actually logged in or not. Then right here, what we're doing is just storing this data into a session using this set user data function. All right, and then down here, we're doing flash data again. It's just a message that says you're logged in, and we're redirecting to products, which is basically the home page. And then here, if it didn't run and there were no matches or the login was wrong, we're going to set flash data for fail login and send them an error message and then redirect to products, and they will not be logged in. Now, before we actually, I'm going to save this, but before we actually try it, I want to make it so that when we're logged in, this form is no longer visible. All we should have is a log out button. All right, so let's do that now, and that is in header. So we want to go to includes, views includes header, and find that form, which is right here. And we're going to check to see if that is logged in value is true. Okay, so PHP, and we're going to say if not, this session user data logged in. Okay, so if we're not logged in, we want to show this form. Okay, and then we want to say else then we want to show a logout form. So I'm going to paste this in. Okay, so it's just a form. The action goes to users logout, which we'll create in a minute. And then it's just a button that says log out. Okay, so let's save that. And before we do anything, let's go ahead and create the logout, which we'll do in the user's controller. Okay, and this is really simple function. All we're doing is unsetting all the data, the user data array. So the logged in will be unset, user ID, username, and then we'll actually destroy the entire session and then redirect to products. Alright, so let's go ahead and try this. Okay, if we go home and I enter anything, call to undefined method user, oh, we didn't create the model function yet. So in user model, I'm going to paste in my login function. Alright, so basically it's just going to, we're going to say this DB where username equals whatever we pass in and password equals whatever we pass in. Alright, and then we're saying result equals get, so that'll give us result row. If result num rows is equal to 1, then we're going to return the result row, basically the ID. We're going to return the user's ID. If not, we're going to return false. And that's why this function here is able to work, alright, if user ID. So let's try that out. Alright, so it didn't log us in, but we need a message here. We need to display our flash data. So let's go back and see what goes on here. Set flash data, fail login. So we need to output this message, and it's going to be in the products view. So let's go there. And let's go ahead and under this, let's paste in this. And we're saying if flash data pass login, then we're going to spit that out. If fail login, then we're going to spit that out. So if we save that and reload this and just try to log in with anything, we get, sorry, the login is not valid. Alright, so let's look at our users table. Alright, now Brad should actually be encrypted, but we added this before we even added the user class. So let's copy this. I believe it's the same password, just encrypted. Alright, username is Brad, so let's go ahead and try that. Alright, so that didn't work. You know what, let's just register a new account. So in my users table, I'm going to get rid of this test user. Alright, and we'll create a new account. This will be John Doe username, we'll say J Doe, password 12345, which should be encrypted. Alright, register. Okay, we're now registered and we can log in. So now let's go up here, say J Doe 12345, and we're now logged in, and you can see a logout button. So that's working absolutely perfect. Alright, and if we click log out, we log out. So now that our user system is implemented, I want to hide a few things here. This create account, if we're logged in, I want that to be hidden because we already created an account. So in the header file, let's find, whoops, that's not header, this is header. Okay, so here's that create account. And again, all we need to do to check if someone's logged in is say, if this session user data logged in. Okay, well, actually we want to show this if the user is not logged in, so we're just going to put an exclamation point here, and then we'll say PHP and if. Alright, save that, reload. We're not logged in, so we see the create account, but let's go ahead and log in. Was it J Doe? And now the create account link is gone. Alright, so let's try to add to cart. That works good. If we go to the cart, now for this here, I don't want this shipping info stuff or this checkout button to be shown if we're logged in. I'm sorry, if we're not logged in. Alright, so let's actually log out, go back to the cart. Let's add something to the cart now. Now when you log out, you destroy the session, all sessions, and your cart is also in a session. So if you log out, your cart gets destroyed as well. Alright, which is normal functionality on most e-commerce sites. Alright, so let's go to the cart. Now we're not logged in, so I don't want to see this. I just want a create account button if the user is not logged in. Alright, so let's go to our, I think it's our cart view. And right above down here, right above the shipping info H3, I'm just going to paste this in. So we're saying if the session, if they're not logged in, then we're going to show this register button and just give them a message. If they are, we're going to show all this. So let me just end this down here. I'm going to right before the form, I believe. Yeah, right before the form will end it. Okay, so let's try that, reload, Now we're not logged in, so we have a create an account button, which goes to register. Alright, if we are logged in, and we go to our cart, we have our form and checkout button. Alright, and one more thing. Let's see. Actually, I think that's it. Yeah, that's it. So all we have left to do now is to implement the PayPal class so that it'll actually take us to PayPal with our cart intact so that the user can pay. Hey guys, the project for this chapter is going to be a little different. We're actually going to build a plugin for WordPress, which is, obviously, it's one of the top blog platforms or CMS, whatever you want to call it. So what we're going to do is build a plugin / widget, and it's going to basically be a contact form that we could put on the sidebar or wherever the template has positions for widgets. Alright, so we're going to use PHP, obviously, because that's what WordPress is built with. But we're also going to use jQuery and Ajax to process the form. We'll ultimately use PHP to send the email, but we're going to make our posts and stuff through